public comments.
Okay.
After the public comments, then we'll move into the board reorganization. And the only other item to change up just slightly is to move the spring sports discussion ahead of the calendar.
Okay.
Since we've got our athletic director and our principal here, and I'd like to have them go ahead and go home. Not have to sit through the calendar conversation. That makes sense. Okay, so if that's agreeable to everyone, we'll proceed.
So we're just opening with public
So
comment?
we'll open for public comments.
Hi, I'm Rachel Willer, 26 Master Drive. I'd just like to offer brief feedback on two things concerning spring sports, especially number two. First and most important is the recent removal of Jalen Branch as a volunteer assistant varsity baseball coach. I really hope this is another coach like Jay. If you're rather in the town, you may not know the time, dedication, and change that's brought to our town and schools. I actually thought of my his coaching organizing responsibilities for town. But yes, he does have a full-time job. I know we've heard many personal stories from families in town since this has happened, and know why so many of us are upset about this. Volunteers are very hard to come by these days, ask any athletic director or rep department. By setting the standard that volunteers can be removed for questioning procedures or asking for changes, we will not have very many volunteers, or at least volunteers that are truly advocating for our kids. As for the cancellation of junior high spring sports, I just today learned of making a formal request for a policy change, so I'll be making that request in the coming days to possibly include spring sports. I'm not sure how this works. I'm learning the policy and the procedure to do it. This is definitely possible. I'm happy to work with the school board to make this happen if parent involvement is allowed. Thank you.
Actually, a public comment. Hi, my name is Taylor Casson. I'm a senior at Newmarket High School, and I live on Blackstone Road. It has been suggested that Mr. LaBranch is not being allowed to return as assistant baseball coach simply because he expressed on social media disagreements with school administration over certain decisions of policy, and that he is somehow being punished merely for expressing his opinion. I don't know the reasons why Mr. LaBranch is not being allowed to coach, but I can tell you that his conduct over there went far beyond mere policy disagreements or about a year ago, Jay LaBranch made the decision to attack me online along with another student. He claimed that my dad wanted to send me to a private school because my dad believed that the Newmarket school system was not good enough for me. That post was far from the truth, and little did Mr. LaBranch know that I was struggling with my mental health. This post only worsened my mental health as it perpetuated more lies and speculation by grown adults online. Furthermore, this sparked side eyes and questions being asked of me at school. Here we are a year ago from my situation, and I never received an apology from this organization. I'm speaking on the situation as it is I'm speaking on the situation a year ago since this happened because people are questioning why this man is allowed to be assistant varsity baseball coach. Well, my situation is just one example why. He was not questioning policy as he claimed that he needed. He attacked minors online. It goes beyond disagreement with administration. Thank you.
Any other public comments from the audience? Being none, we received two online. And I will read them. Did anybody else receive anything? Okay. The first email we received was from Mr. Jay LaBranch, 3 Channing Way, Newmarket, New Hampshire. I am sorry I will not be able to attend tonight's meeting. I'm a volunteer coach in town, and with no gym time available at Newmarket, our Newmarket 3-quarter basketball team is at the mercy of time available in Hampton in order to prepare for our first tournament coming this weekend. I am writing in response to agenda item 2 under discussion items, which is spring sports. It was made aware to me and other parents a week ago that the decision to cancel spring sports for the middle school and junior varsity would be upheld based on the steering committee recommendations from the summer of 2020. The decision was based on the pandemic that all of us. It's unfortunate that the steering committee did not meet again to discuss the potential of allowing kids to play spring sports at that level. Instead, we upheld a recommendation which, in my opinion, did not include the appropriate thought by community and school, and no effort was made to find out how we could have these programs. We as a community and school have to stop focusing on what we cannot do and start focusing on what we can do. The kids in Newmarket school system have been through so much physically and mentally because of this pandemic. I had the opportunity to coach the 7th and 8th grade boys and girls this season, and multiple parents informed me how thankful they were for their child to be out of the house doing something they loved in a safe manner. It's the little things that you as a board can do to help these kids who are struggling mentally. It's not just sports. We should be thinking of ways that we have all extracurricular activities instead of just not allowing them. The governor has opened schools and mandated that schools go back to in-person learning. Many of these schools are still having spring sports. Keeping kids out of school programs will not stop them from playing. Kids are going to play. In my opinion, it puts the kids at a higher risk playing for club or AAU teams that travel out of the state and in some facilities don't wear masks. And those same students are in Newmarket's doors on Monday. By allowing our own programs, we control the environment and make sure kids are safe. Sports are open in New Hampshire and kids are going to play. I wonder why it's any safer for just varsity to have a season and not the other grades. Our gyms should be open to Newmarket students, and our kids should be given any chance of normalcy that we as a community and a school can give them. The second letter is from Joseph Lamatina. To whom it may concern, I would greatly appreciate if this could be read by someone from the board during the comment section who does not be able to attend the meeting. I'm writing to express my disappointment that the Newmarket School District would prevent Mr. Jay LaBranch from volunteering as a varsity assistant coach. Mr. LaBranch is an asset to this community. He has volunteered hundreds of hours to the community and children of Newmarket and has asked for nothing in return. I understand that COVID may be the reasoning behind this, but surely arrangements can be made for Mr. LaBranch to comply with the same requirements that any other coaching staff are required to do. The school district's own policy on volunteers, policy ABA, states, the board shall encourage the involvement of citizens to fulfill the mission. Note, the policy says the board. I am asking the issue with Mr. LaBranch be rectified by the board tonight, regardless of whether it is on the agenda or not. Thank you, Joe Lamatina, 13 Great Hill Drive. Any other public comments? Okay. We'll now move to the next item on the agenda, which is board reorganization. Item number 1 is the election of the chair and the vice chair. I will seek any nominations for the chair at this time.
I'd like to nominate Kimberly Shelton as the new chair of Newmarket School Board.
You accept this nomination?
I do.
We have to have a second.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. You accept?
I accept.
Then we open it up for discussion.
Yep.
Then we get to discuss it. That's part of Robert's rules, so nothing's set in stone.
I guess I appreciate you willingness to do it. I know you'd be a wonderful chair, having that you've already done it before. I guess my only concern is that next year, where does that leave the board? Unless, because you guys are both up to renewal, so unless you both, or one of you was reelected, I'm concerned we wouldn't have somebody with handle being a chair. So that would be my only reason to have concerns
Right.
about having you do it.
I mean, I don't know if maybe we could, well, I guess I can't talk to another position, but there might be a way to achieve that in another position. Those concerns, Gary, is what I'm thinking. If you can understand what I'm saying. But I understand it.
Can you explain kind of the role of the chair and if there's anything the chair is privy to that the rest of us aren't?
There are some things, a couple things. Everything that, when I was the chair for 3 years before, and there were some things that there might be a discussion with the superintendent about on the fly before I had a chance to discuss it with the full board. There were times when she would call me and say, X, Y, Z has happened in the schools. Can you call the board members? I would call them and tell them what their situation was. So there are those times. There are times that also I would represent the board places. If, you know, obviously I would get the input from everyone, but I would be permitted to speak out for the board and be the voice of the board as well.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
You know, my whole goal in my service, and you guys would have no way of knowing this, is that, you know, my dedication is to the kids and the faculty and staff of this situation. But sitting here for almost these 6 years, we have a ton of, and my goal is for us to come together in a coalition of 5 and 6 with Susan to do the best that we can for everyone. There are going to be times that we may not agree on things, but my hope and prayer is that we can do it without being disagreeable with each other and having respect. When I started before, there were 2 people on the board that didn't really talk to each other. And by the time it was over, they were pretty close to friends. And I don't think that was all me, but I think that my leadership and direction and ability to sort of listen to people and share different points of view made a difference.
Thank you.
I have a couple observations. I've watched you, Kim, for years on the school board, and I really feel that your tenure and your experience right now is critical. I think that our district faces some really important decisions around New Hampshire legislation, with contract negotiations, as well as our accreditation. And I think having a chair with this kind of experience for that many years, I think is really crucial to where we are. And I also believe that you will be very impartial and thoughtful. You exude that when you're on.
I hope so.
And I mean, with what you've done, you've conducted yourself very nicely, ethically, with leadership. You've been a steward for all 900 kids plus, and I think you have a wide scope in your experience. The one thing I will say to Gary's mention is that I don't want to think about what's going to happen in March of 2022. Today's the first day of the 2021 school board, and we have stuff that we have to do right now in the next 12 months. 2020 was a bad enough year, and I don't want to start looking at 2022 until we can get through this 12 months. And I think that the board needs to focus on championing these children for this year. So those are my comments and observations.
And I nominated her because having her in that position as leadership, she has brought this board together. Right now, and I've talked to several of you, I just want us to work together and be a team, because we do have a lot of work to do in the next year. So that was my reason for nominating Kim.
You know, not going into a lot of it also, but I think, you know, really working with Susan to get some team building in. You know, one of the things that was a challenge last year, Gary, you know this better than anyone else, is you guys came, we had one meeting, and then we didn't meet in person for months. And so we never needed to coalesce as a group and get, you know, it's difficult for me to read you on a screen as opposed to being in the room with you. So I think that we have an opportunity with the new board members, and even with you, Gary, and the 3 of us who've worked together, to really hit the ground running with team building. Because, you know, we're going to have some hard work to do, but we have to believe that we can work together as a team, that we can trust each other and move forward. And I believe we can do that.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very
Opposed?
much.
Okay, motion passes. Would you like me to do the gavel? You have a nomination for the vice chair?
I nominate Gary Swanson.
Have a second?
I'm gonna second it so we can open up for discussion. Because again, I think it's part of Robert's rules and it's important that we do that. So, Gary, I think one of the reasons I just did this so we could have this discussion, I want to build a team. I need to have us all work together and get to know each other more, and we haven't been able to get to know each other over the past year. So, I'd like to go a different direction, but I want you to know that. I don't want to just leave you hanging. So, I'm sorry about that, but I think that we need to be, well, I don't know, you guys, let me do it. That's how I feel, but let's see what others feel.
I mean, I think that, it's a challenging time because, we're trying to figure out things. Andrew and Heather are here for the first time. We haven't even welcomed them yet. We'll do that in a minute. But I think that we really have to look at, partnerships that are going to make sense. And Gary, that might be you having that role and the two of us working together, because I do believe that we could work successfully together. There are going to be times that I'm going to say no and you're going to say no, and we're going to say, okay, this is the reason why we move on. So I think we need to look at the whole picture as to what's best for the board.
First, I want to be very open, me being on the board for the first time, that I am running truly because I want to build a good school district. And my kids are going to be in the school district for 12 years. So I am not coming in with any agenda or anything. I will tell you that just like running for election and like after last week, talking to a variety of people everywhere, what has surprised me is the lack of trust amongst everyone.
Yeah.
And it's not, and I've only been here for 6 years, so I have no idea what's coming before this. The reason I nominated Gary is I think the world of Gary because he's taken the time to talk to me when he had questions, even when he was outside gathering his paper, and I would stop him, and I've always admired that. I think having Gary and having that additional voice would help build that trust. Talking to Gary, I don't think he has any hidden agenda. I trust him, and I want the board and I want everyone in the community to feel like they have a voice as well.
Andrew, I will say one of the things over this tenure, we had gotten to a point after, it was when Mike and Al came on and then I came on afterwards, where we had the 2014 vote where it was, I'm a yes, you're a no, I don't like you anymore, just horrible. And Al and Mike had sort of branched out to get to different parts of the community to bring a coalition back together. And we had gotten to the point, and this is one of the things that I've lost sleep over this past year, because point where people believed that we were going to do the right thing for students at every choice. And sometime in the past 18 months that got questioned. And that has killed me, because I have sat here and would continue to sit here for as long as I need to. And so I think that whatever we need to do to rebuild the trust is important, because people have to believe that we're going to do what's right. Mm-hmm. And it may not be the most popular thing at all times, but it may be the right thing. Mm-hmm. And that's the sort of the balance that we're in. Yeah. But I think it's important.
I appreciate that.
So we take a vote.
Well, you can, or is there any other nominations? We can take a vote on this.
I think,
Take a vote on the nomination of Gary as the vice chair. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Is
Nay.
there anyone else who's willing to nominate somebody?
I will nominate Heather Durant. She is one night, unless that would be my thought, Heather. And I think I'll just leave it at that.
I'll second that one too.
My thought with you, Heather, is obviously, and you know, it could be Andrew, it could be Heather. We're all 24 hours into. You guys got sworn in a night ago, but I think that it sort of serves the purpose that Gary was talking about having the future leadership. But I agree with your point also that we need to focus on today and not 12 months from now.
You know, as I said, every meeting that I've had with any people in the community and friends and other board members, I come to this board with the utmost in leadership and professional skills. My entire career is based around working with board of directors and facilitating policies with large groups of employees and large groups of the general population. So it's right in my wheelhouse, which I think, you know, when I was thinking that this board needs strong people in specific locations and specific duties. You know, each of us comes here with a special skill set. You know, I look at Andrew, and his skill set is curriculum and educational direction, and that's what the voters wanted. They wanted someone that could come in and be what needed to be done on this board. We're not all five going to be the exact same thing. And what I bring is that leadership and that experience with legislation and with mass groups of employees, and I think that I can bring something good to you. You know, if you all decide to vote me in as vice chair, I will watch and listen, and I do my homework. Anyone that knows me knows that I come prepared with a lot of knowledge. So we're going to be navigating some serious issues in this next 12 months, and I think we have to tap into the resources on this board where people really can shine. So.
Any other comments? So we will bring it to a vote. All those in favor of Heather as the vice chair, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. I'll turn the gavel over to Chairwoman
Yes.
Kelly.
All right, moving forward, you'll see on the next page we have the committee assignments. And what I'm gonna do tonight is sort of walk through what each one is, and then, as you can see in the thing, you can let me know by next Wednesday what you might want to be in. If we have people that wanna do the same things, we'll figure it out in the next meeting. But again, to Heather's point just a minute ago, making sure that people are most comfortable and can be most successful. Is that okay with everyone?
I'm just wondering why we're waiting a week. Last year we just did it, I think, at the same meeting.
We could do, but we could do that. My only
I mean,
thought
if there's a
was,
reason, I'm certainly willing to.
no, my only thought was that people might wanna have more time, but if people are fine to do it,
It's up to I think the new members. They
Could
can
we
up to-
maybe have like a day or so, just so, like, I'd love to ask you some questions?
But we wouldn't be able to formally do it till the next meeting, so it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
yeah, that way we could see, just going through, we've done the chair and the vice chair.
Just to see who would be really good fits for some of these things, instead
Sure.
of just saying, okay, I'll do it.
The first one is the school budget committee. For those of you that don't know, I know Gary's been on the budget committee. Andrew, I'm sure you've seen it as well. There's a school board representative who attends the budget committee meetings, is a voting member of that committee, so we need a person to be that role and report back to us what happened in the budget committee meetings, and to some degree be a representative of the school board at the budget committee meetings. And then we'll need an alternate for that in case someone can't show up.
And it's busy just usually right before, when budget season starts. That's when you'll be double teaming on meetings.
Like the fall
Yeah.
to January
Yeah.
is the core time with that one. The next one is the policy committee, and what he does is working with Susan. We need two members for that one also, and I would suggest we have one of the newer board members and one of the older board members on that one. That's my suggestion there, but we need two. And that is looking at the policy, looking at legislative updates to make those where applicable. And if there's a Newmarket specific policy that we need to look at, the committee would then, with Susan's help, bring that up and then bring it to the full board for the vote. The next one is our representative at the Seacoast School of Technology. As you guys know, we send students over to SST for a variety of different disciplines. There are an is that a monthly meeting, Elizabeth?
That's a monthly meeting. That might ramp up because they're looking at changing programming. So it's actually an important role right now to represent
We
our
have had some
district.
amazing students going through the variety of programs at SST in a wealth of things that I couldn't even imagine when I was in high school, from biotech to culinary arts to everything in between, carpentry, everything. And so our representative goes to those meetings with Susan and then reports back to the board on that. Then the next one is the Staff Development Committee, and that is working with the district, what's it called?
Yeah, it's a combination of personnel
PD.
and,
PD.
you know, teachers,
Professional development
paras,
and-
administration, yeah.
Yes, get together to plan the professional development days. Obviously, that's something that the superintendent team would lead, but there's some things that I've served on that one. That one used to meet about once a month, but I'm not sure that's been happening lately. The next one is the delegate to the New Hampshire School Boards Association. I don't recall that we've ever sent anyone to the annual meeting, but that person would go to the annual meeting.
Per school board policy, that's the vice chair.
Oh, okay.
I can confirm that, but I'm quite sure.
Okay. I have never known that till right now.
All the years that I don't think we've ever seen.
Nope.
There's a bunch of policies out there.
But,
There's a bunch of policies out there.
yes, I'm aware.
Yeah.
The next one is very important because we're going into a negotiation process with the teachers in the fall, in the summer and the fall. We'll need 2 representatives to serve as the board representatives for the negotiations. That is starting in about August or September, at least 1 or 2 meetings a week, and until it's done. And then, those 2 people will come back to the board and make sure that the board is on board with the
agreement.
decisions and agreements and things, and then we'll go from there. And the last one is a capital improvement program. It's a town-wide thing. It's a committee. And basically, the CIP was developed to sort of allow the town to plan for big purchases. So the town brings their big purchases, we bring our big purchases. A lot of times for us, it becomes budgetary things as opposed to waiting for any CIP or tax relief, but that's what that is.
The meetings for the budget negotiations, are those typically in the evening or during the day, or?
They can be so you might have to take a day off from school. They can be on weekends. They go into the evening.
Okay.
I think generally like at the end of the school day, since the teachers are available. That's when we did it with the paras, right? Or on the weekend sometimes, but.
Yeah,
I'm trying to I think ours might have been around 3 or 3 o'clock for the teacher
they usually try to make it around 3, so it goes late
Usually
into
the
the
two
evening.
teams come together and part of their ground rules, they
Yep.
make those kinds of decisions about when they'll meet, how frequently, and what the ground rules will be, so.
Okay.
I've seen it only in the evening, I've seen it after school with teachers, it just really depends on who's on the team and what, makes sense for the group.
Okay. Thank you.
So if you guys have any questions about that, ask them. Elizabeth's been on the SST committee. I've been on, and the budget committee. I've done the committee for 100 years. And I've been the district staff development committee representative, and I was on the negotiation team with teachers. Susan, and I'll ask the board's pleasure, we might want to go ahead and proceed with the spring reports now before we
Yes.
even get into the reports.
Yes,
Jamie, would you like to make your report right now?
I believe, did you show the guidelines?
I did,
Mhm.
it's in their
You
packet.
have all the guidelines, so, I'll just kind of go, a lot of it's the same.
Right.
As we've used in the past, we will have it looks like Tuesday night, I'm gonna have a parent meeting, via Zoom with the players and parents and coaches. Everyone will be over to go over the protocols after they get approved tonight. All of our coaches are completing the online, COVID course for administrators and coaches through the National Federation of High School Sports before they start their season. Offering levels, we're sticking with the steering committee's recommendation from the summer for varsity sports only. Not that one is safer than the other at the level. We have one baseball field, we have one softball field. us to run sub-varsity of a middle school and a JV and a varsity would be tough to get 3 teams in their rooms that we're using. So all of our practices are starting at 3:30 or 4 o'clock. And for us, before, sundown is at 6:50 tonight, I believe. So for us to get all 3 teams cycled through one field or in the gym, we just don't have the space for it. As well as a lot of schools in our middle school league. I looked the other day, there were 7 schools that were definitely not having spring sports, and there were 3 or 4 that were still waiting on board decisions, and there were a few that were thinking about just doing something in-house, like of intramurals or skills and drills and stuff like that. So there are not a lot of schools that are having spring sports at the middle school level. Few are having JV, but that's a lot of the bigger schools that, because this year you can't, we don't want to swing players and have players that play JV and varsity, because it's, if one of those swing players comes up, it tests positive, you've just shut down 2 teams. So, schools aren't swinging players. So the bigger schools that can have a separate JV team and a separate varsity team, they're the teams that are having JV, but most of the small schools are not. As well as, we have one athletic trainer to check in all those teams, and he wouldn't be able to treat any athletes. He would just be checking in kids every half hour. So it's just, logistically, it's really difficult. As other schools are having the same issues. I think some of the schools that are able to offer sub-varsity or middle school sports are the ones that are only a middle school, where they don't have to share the field with other teams. They have one baseball team for their one baseball field. We're in a unique situation, different from that. As well as transportation. A lot of bus drivers have opted out this year. They don't have the buses that are ready available. It's been a little bit better, but we were told that try not to get a bus before 3 o'clock or 3:30, 4 o'clock. Getting a bus at 2:30 is not easy. We can possibly get one a day if it's working out, especially with a lot of schools going back into session now. The more buses are being used for the schools because the governor's mandated that schools reopen. So the buses that may have been available in the other seasons are not going to be available in the spring to us. Let's see. So our safety protocols are the same. Every player will be checked into practice, scanned with a thermometer. We're still using our Family ID app, so we ask the questions of, the normal scanning that we come into school. If your temperature is in an appropriate range and you answer no to all those questions, we track the attendance on the Family ID, and that gives us contact tracing. So it's here, present that day or not present that day. If it comes up that, hey, 2 days ago we had a baseball player test positive, we need to know who the close contacts were. We could just print a report off that of who was at practice and what days and all that. So that's how we're doing that tracing. The players will store their equipment. We're not using the locker rooms. We've designated separate hallways. The baseball players will use one hallway. The softball players will use another hallway, spacing all their gear 6 feet apart. And the track team will use the lobby that we have. So everyone has separate areas. And then we fog the locker room or hallway area and the gym or training area in between every session. We have at least 30 minutes built in between, so we can get the first team out. We can fog the area, let the air settle and clear, and then check the next team in so they come into a safe environment. We are retaining our JV coaches at 50% so that we have another set of eyes and can break up our teams into smaller pods. If the head coach happens to have to go out for a quarantining issue, we can still run the team because we do have a contracted employee still on staff. We will not have volunteer coaches. as I said, we're gonna use pods, of try to 10 or less, like baseball, you know, they'll have outfielders doing this, infielders doing this, pitchers and catchers doing this. You know, track will have sprinters and throwers and you know, middle distance and long distance all separated and doing different workouts. Shared equipment, as far as a lot of the baseball and softball players have their own helmets, have their own bats, and the ones that do not, we will be assigning helmets to them, number them, issue them for the year, just like you would a book or a uniform. And at the end of the year, we'll collect them back, so there won't be any sharing of helmets, and the catchers have their own catcher's gear, you know, and those things. So we're trying to minimize and we'll any shared equipment as much as possible. We have the sanitizer there, constantly telling the kids to sanitize and you know, and to provide that safe environment as much as possible. We're staggering practice times again. Track will go at 4 o'clock with a check-in of 3:45. Softball at 5 o'clock with a check-in at 4:45. And baseball at 7:15 with a check-in at 7 o'clock. And this is right now while we're still in the gym. When we get outside, we'll look at those for daylight and probably about the same time, but maybe moved up a little bit because you know, softball will have their own field, so we just have to stagger the check-in times, not the practice times. Transportation will still be masks, one player per seat unless it's a sibling. We won't stop after games. We won't be eating on the buses. You know, they can drink their water like they would in a classroom, but then you put the mask right back up. We're using a regional schedule again, so we're playing all local towns. You know, to try to stay in the area as well as make the bus rides shorter as well. So for home games, for baseball and softball, we won't be able to use the dugouts just because we can't social distance in that environment. They're not big enough. Maybe your pitcher and catcher can stay there, you know, while your team is up to bat, so they can get a break a little bit and they can talk about strategy. You know, we could probably fit, you know, 3-4 people in there. You know, but we'll be using outside the fence areas in the foul territory. We'll be distancing the kids like we did for basketball with, you know, marked off spots, and same thing we did for soccer. You know, X's on or chairs to separate. So for fans, we would have to have 2 fans per home athlete like we did for soccer, and they would watch from the behind the outfield fence out in center field and in the whole outfield, so that we can spread our athletes and our bench areas down the sideline without close contact from spectators with the athletes. And on home games, because of this, we will have, if our softball team is playing home, our baseball team will be playing away on the same day. So we would only have one set of teams or parents that, you know, to get to the softball field, you have to cross through the baseball area, you know, and you'd be going by one of the visiting dugout, and it'd just be, you know, foul balls going into one field and the other, and it just wouldn't be great for distancing. So that's what we've done there. So the timeline is we've started skills and drills this week, and they're optional. And then March 29th is the NHIA first day to have a practice or tryout, and then on April 12th will be the first day to play. The season will be 7 weeks. They have 14 games scheduled right now. There will be 2 games in a week, 1 home, 1 away, against the same school. So if something does have contact tracing, we'd only play 1 school in a week. So we wouldn't have to worry about shutting down multiple schools or multiple teams if there was a open case where we had to do contact tracing and everything. At the end of the season, there will be an open tournament just like we have for soccer and basketball. So it doesn't matter what your record is. It doesn't matter. I mean, basketball, we played 7 regular season games this year and still went to the tournament. You know, it doesn't matter how many games you played, or everybody has a chance to make the tournament. So if you happen to get shut down, then you know, you still have a shot at the end there. So which makes every game pretty much a scrimmage. so it's about getting better, it's about getting an opportunity, and, you don't have to worry about going for that undefeated season or that number 1 seed and all that. And so it just, takes a little bit of pressure off. And, I think it provides a good environment for the athletes and the coaches. You don't have to, the preseason is only 2 weeks long this year, so they don't have to be stressed about, trying to get everything done before that first game. And, if you don't have anything in, you just go out and compete the best you can and take advantage of getting that opportunity. So I have a executive council meeting for the NHIA tomorrow morning. So the sport-specific modifications, we'll vote on those tomorrow morning. So I'll include those into the packet, like I did in the previous seasons, and I'll share that with Dr. Givens, so she can share that back out with you before Tuesday's meeting. I believe that covers everything without having to read everything to you. Everyone will be masked. Again, the question came up of why do you need to mask your outfielders? They're so far apart. Well, if an outfielder's coming in on a ball and the shortstop's going out on the ball and they collide, or they get close, then we want to have everyone, if we send our trainer out there and one of the outfielders isn't masked, we're putting him at risk. And so the schools in our cohort have all decided that they're going to be wearing masks, and I believe the NHIA, again, will have everyone masked again. The only time there won't be masks are for some of the track and field events where it would be a risk to have it go up over the eyes, like a high jump or a pole vault or something like that. Anything that is not a safety risk, everyone will be in masks.
Any questions from anybody?
As we were getting all these emails this week, all I can remember is last year at this time, just thinking, like scrambling to do everything and seeing those senior kids just hoping that they could play baseball. And just knowing that you were able to not throw this together, obviously, to get this together and so that our kids can play. Is it perfect? No. But I'm just so grateful they get to play, and my heart still breaks for the kids that didn't get to play last year. So I really appreciate the work and effort that our state, all our athletic directors have put into this.
Thank you.
Jamie, I've never met you, but you're running an amazing program under these circumstances. I have a son in junior high, and he can't play, unfortunately. I'm heartbroken, but I know that it's just for now, and it's not forever, and you've got everyone in town is supporting you on everything that you're trying to do.
Thank you, I appreciate that. One of the like you said, the hardest thing last year was I felt for the that didn't get that year, especially the baseball players after winning the state championship
Right.
and having a chance to come back and do it again and everything like that. So I know that's our early discussions. That's why we said let's at least try to get varsity, because those seniors aren't going to get this year back. The junior high athletes, the JV athletes, and everything like that. They're not going to get their freshman year back, or they're not going to get their 8th grade year back, but they're going to have more time, in the future, and hopefully, maybe Babe Ruth can start, maybe travel softball can start earlier this year, where they don't have to wait for these middle school kids and these JV kids to get done with their school season, and they can get some opportunities there. So.
I think given what we've learned since last summer when we started putting these plans together, and our understanding of the virus and how to control exposure, and given that these sports are outdoors, and that we really asked the kids and the parents to do a ton, and they've done it without blinking. It would be really nice if we could try to find some way to do some sort of, whether it be just practices for the JV kids or practices for cross-country kids, so that they can at least get together, bond, get outside, do some activities, do some practices, try to stay in their mind in whatever sports that they do. I know you've mentioned check-in, you're concerned about that. You're saying check-in time takes about 15 minutes, or lasts for 15 minutes. I assume it doesn't take 15 minutes to check in.
Yeah.
That many kids. I'm just wondering if there's anything we can do to give the kids a little bit of glimmer of hope here, as we're learning and as the virus is fortunately getting under control. It seems like we need to have caution and, you know, do things with thought. But it seems like there must be something we can do, especially when we have lighting at the field for that matter. So we could go later into the evenings if daylight's a issue.
Sure. Yeah, I think, obviously in the gym, I don't know that that's a possibility, you know, just because
Sure.
of spacing and everything.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we could, you know, look at some of the local schools that I said are doing intramurals and stuff like that of, you know, skills and drills, and, you know, maybe we can, you know, figure out what their approach is for May, you know, after we get back, and see if we can put something together for 3 or 4 weeks for the kids that
That'd be
didn't get a chance
fantastic.
to play on a team, or, you know, and you know, see what that would take, and, you know, and how they're doing that, and if it's possible that we could do that.
I mean, I hate to exclude middle school, but I think if we had to, obviously JV would be the logical next choice.
Yeah. Yep, you know, and
School.
maybe it's something we could run like 8th through 10th grade or something like that, you know, and you know, maybe bring those 8th graders in, and, you know, because sometimes you do play them on JV and
Oh,
something like
that's
that.
good,
So,
yeah.
you know, I think it's something we could explore, and at least, you know,
I think it'd be a wonderful gesture to the community and
yeah,
show that we empathize.
I don't know why we should, you know, it would be a no right now. I absolutely think it's something we could explore. I think it's a good idea.
The other thing is you mentioned there was no volunteers.
Yes.
There was something about volunteer travel. I assume that's just for car rides, but I assume that's just from old. There's something about,
I think that's in reference to if
Transportation.
folks aren't riding the bus and somebody's volunteering to
Yeah.
drive their student.
Oh,
I think
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what
That's what
the
I figured it was.
transportation is. in
Yeah,
reference
if a
Yeah,
parent,
yeah.
if a parent is on there, through Family ID, we have permission to drive.
oh, I see.
So, so for your emergency contacts, you could give them permission to drive somebody home from a game or pick them
Oh,
up
they're
from
not a
practice.
family. Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for everything you've done this year. I'm guessing probably preparing for a pandemic was not on your list of stuff to do, but thank you. So.
Thank you.
Yes, Jamie, thank
There
you.
you go.
Thank you.
Susan, we can go,
Yes.
I had another,
You both, yep. And if there's no other questions, do you
no,
want to
any
take a
questions?
vote?
No, I don't think do we need to, since we
On
started?
the spring, yeah, on the
On
spring.
spring
so we
coaches.
can
I
all-
think we had voted on all the other ones, yeah.
But okay, because I wasn't sure if the thing that we voted on in the fall covered the whole year or not.
But we
Well,
voted on
these are-
winter, definitely, yeah,
We've always,
yeah.
Okay, then
I don't know, yeah.
I seek a motion to approve the, spring sports guidelines that were outlined by Mr. Hayes tonight.
Second.
Nope, I need a motion.
I'll
Oh,
make the
sorry.
motion.
So moved.
You can second it.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Swanson and second from Ms. McKinney to
Good.
approve the spring sports.
Gotta get used to me
Any
being chair.
discussion?
None. Again, just
Thank
happy that
you.
some
Thank
of
you
them get
both
to
very
play.
much. Thank you. Hearing no further discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? I'm sure I heard everyone. All right, so that's
I
approved.
think it was unanimous.
Unanimous vote, 5-0. Jana, another thing, since we have poor Jana out here, board members, can we go ahead and approve the bid recommendation for the
Oh,
business
right.
administrator, so she doesn't have to stay here with the board?
That would be good.
Allow me to that way?
Sure, and then we'll let Taylor go.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's okay, I don't have much to report today, so.
Jana, come on forward if you would. Jana, everyone, this is Jana Mallon, the business administrator.
Hi.
Andrew Hemiker, Heather Durant, our new board members. I don't know if you've met her, but I want to make sure. Jana, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the flexibility on the agenda as well. And congratulations to our two new board members, Mr. Haymaker and Ms. Durant. We look forward to working with you. And, you know, as always, thank you to all of you for volunteering to serve in this capacity. It's not always easy, and we really appreciate you working on behalf of the school district, so thank you. So tonight, I alluded to it at one of the, I think it was the last meeting, we have a series of RFPs that we have out that are going to be coming before you. This is the first of those RFPs. It is for the junior, senior high annex kitchenette that will be going in the building across from the junior, senior high in the annex. It's a very small area. It'll just basically be countertops, cabinets, and a fridge that we hope we will be able to utilize better as a district. We do have some employees working over at that location, but there also will be a conference area that, a small conference room that we might be able to use that kitchenette for. So in preparation for this project, we had a kitchen company called Kitchen Encounters out of Guilford come and draw us some plans and give us some ideas. They did so pro bono, which was very nice and very much appreciated. We put the drawings out in the RFPs, which are up on our website. We only had one bidder. However, we did ask Kitchen Encounters if they would give us a quote as to what they felt the work was worth. They gave us two quotes, one for different types of cabinetry, and both of those quotes were higher than the amount that Moran Contracted formally bid. So we do have a little bit of a bid for comparison. So our recommendation to the board is to accept the bid from Moran Contracting Services in the amount of $9,928 for the project.
I'll make a motion to accept that bid.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Ms. McKinney with a second from Mr. Rant to approve the Newmarket School District accepting the bid of Moran Contracting Services for the junior senior high kitchen annex project of $9,928. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm just specifically, or who specifically is gonna be using that building? How many rooms are we getting?
I was gonna ask that.
There are, so some of the new positions, so our, as you know, the facilities person who's now our staff member is moving over there. The
Food service
director, our network IT person is there, and then when we hire the instructional coach, technology integrator, they will be housed over there as well.
So we have 4 offices over there.
So there's four offices and then another space, and we're hoping if we can also use the downstairs area in the long run.
The
we
cellar?
have
Does it
The
basically?
downstairs, what we would like to do in the long run is be able to have a place to put files, because we're running out of capacity to store files for the SAU, and there's no dry area. So that would be the other purpose for the annex building.
And that is a dry area, because when we bought it, it flooded, and so we paid money to make it a dry area. So that happened probably like 6-7 years ago. Yeah. Yeah, it flooded.
I'm just,
So that's the, and, so there'll be a little conference space there that could be used, so if our social worker, needed to have a family come in, there's not really a private space to be able to use, so, there's multiple purposes that space can be used for.
so,
Um,
we've, go ahead, I'm sorry. Nanette?
There are drawings for up on. There's going to be just a refrigerator. We can't have a stove due to fire code. So we'll have a microwave and probably some type of countertop heating device, like a little small freestanding convection.
Is that included in this?
No. Some of those things, the microwave may be repurposed from other locations and those types of things. But we currently don't have. It's a new space, so we don't have any of those pieces of equipment in the space.
So the electrical, the plumbing, and all of that is part of this pricing proposal.
Well, remember we talked about we're doing phase 2 of an exterior renovation on that. So the electrical and plumbing are actually kind of part of that phase.
A different bid?
Yeah, so this does not include the electrical and the plumbing. This is for the install, the cabinetry, the countertop, and all the finishing that's needed, the leveling, things like that.
So just to be clear, there's no additional electrical after this? You
We-
said that was
well,
part of
there-
the other, or there will be?
Part of the other, we actually have to do some because the electrical service comes into the building and it attaches up on the eaves. And in order to have our contractors safely work on that, we have to get an electrician to move that electrical service to a pole So there will be some electrical work down the road that will be coming across.
That's exterior.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm just getting a little concerned because we've got $50,000 of work we've done on it, $5,000 boiler, $829 or $20 vacuum cleaner, $10,000 vanity. I think there's roof work that needs to be done.
It's part of the phase two.
Oh, that is part of the phase two?
Yes, yeah.
And
The
that's already
phase two
been
includes all of
approved
that. And that vacuum
and funded?
cleaner, while it was listed for the annex, the new vacuum cleaner is actually going to one of our buildings. We're taking one of our older ones and bringing it over there, just to save our staff from having to walk across the street with a vacuum.
Oh, no, that totally makes sense, but yeah.
Yeah, so that,
I just, a battery-powered vacuum, I'm thinking, I'd like one of those.
yeah.
So we don't know how, the roof work, everything else has already been funded then, except for this.
Well, we have money every year in our budget to do improvement projects throughout the district, and some of those, I believe, if I'm understanding, were delayed due to so they still existed as a project. So the next phase of the RFP, we did the annex in 2 phases, one that primarily focused on the inside to build those office spaces. This kitchenette was separate from that because we didn't do the whole interior, and we knew the kitchen area, if I'm probably describing it poorly, but it
No, that
abuts
makes sense.
the front of the
Yeah.
storefront.
Yeah.
And those windows had failed, and we have to get somebody in to do the construction both on the inside and the outside of that front. So we didn't want to put a kitchenette in that area while we still hadn't finished the walls and we're going to be replacing windows and all of that. So
Well, has
that's
the
why.
board approved phase two, I guess is what I was asking.
You will be when the RFP comes to.
Oh, so the RP hasn't come through us yet? I got you.
No.
I'm with you, okay,
Yeah,
thank you very much.
yeah.
Any other questions?
So just for the new board members, of course, the budget's passed as it is for this year already. And so there was a number of things that we had planned on doing, but right after the budget was passed, we all went into pandemic mode. And so many of the projects, which you're gonna see now, are projects that we had originally intended to be able to do in the summer, but because we had to completely, reimagine how, one, we were going to educate our kids, and two, how we were gonna hire facilities and get signage and all of that, that took up our capacity to do any projects. So with Devin on board now and with us kind of in a bit of a rhythm, we're trying to do a little bit of catch-up. So normally you wouldn't be necessarily seeing these now. We would have seen them earlier in the year, but because we didn't have the ability to do them earlier. So we tried to do little bits and pieces as we could. This is a project that was slated to be done, but we just didn't have the bandwidth to do everything, so we did what we could. Greg had done the drawings for the inside before he had left, and he ended his time with us, as we all know, back in January. So we
Year ago,
had
January.
this kind of queued up for
Yeah.
us, but we
Yeah.
didn't have the other parts queued up, and so we did whatever we could. And now we have Devin, and Jana was able to get drawings for the other pieces, and we wanted to make sure that we have drawings and clear specifications, before we go out to bid. So that's why you're gonna see some of these projects come in, so that we can finish them up. And it does seem kind of odd, and it seems a little fragmented, but, again, we've all had to make modifications to what our priorities are because of the circumstances, so.
Can I ask, this is a little bit off topic. My understanding of New Hampshire law, exactly at what point does it need to go in front of the voters, and at what point could the board decide?
So you mean like a building project type thing
Right.
versus doing repairs and such?
Yeah.
So we have money that's in our budget that's set aside for doing certain projects, year in, year out. They're not big, money projects.
Yeah.
They're not like $250,000 or, big projects along those lines. So we do try to do a certain amount of updating, along the way. For example, in the budget that was just passed, we're doing 6 rooms of carpet. That's what we're scheduled to do this summer. Next year, we'll do 6 more rooms of carpet. So they're more, kind of smaller scale.
Yeah.
If there was gonna be a big building project, then that type of thing would go before the town. Another example was this last year, we moved a number of items that were not funded through the building project, but we wanted to use the funding source of interest money from the bonds to be able to use that. Well, we didn't have the authority to be able to spend bond interest money without the taxpayers' vote.
Okay.
And so that's why that went before the taxpayers. So certain things, once the taxpayers vote and authorize us to use it, then we are free to go ahead and engage in entering into contracts and all of that, because that's considered being money appropriated.
Okay.
So it just depends on the funding source sometimes, when it has to go before the taxpayers, but the appropriation comes from them.
Okay.
So spending authority always has to come from the taxpayer. Once that is, if you're bonding a big project, again, the funding authority comes always from the taxpayer. Then the contract awards and all of that, you have policy for. So for projects that are a certain size, they come before the board. Some that are smaller, we just get pricing and we move forward with them. So some of that is baked into policy and what comes before you versus what we administratively can do to get the work done.
That helps, thank you.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to mention too, for the new board members, the existing ones remember, but some of this phase 2 annex work that you're going to be seeing in the next RFPs came as a result of the fact that when we did the first phase, we discovered some issues that we had to address at the annex. We had a leaking skylight. There was only 3 inches of insulation in the attic. We had a broken, failing windows on the front that really we didn't realize they'd failed until one of them actually cracked. So the second phase of the RFP, we tried to really take a good deep look at the whole building to make sure that we take care of any issues with it, so that when we do this final phase of the project, we're done with the building, and we know it's sound.
Hearing nothing else, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of approving the motion for the annex, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is approved unanimously.
Thank you very
Jana.
much.
Susan, why don't you go ahead with your report, and then we'll get to Taylor after you.
Do you want to just do
Can we
Taylor's
change
and then
the order?
she can,
Yeah.
Yes.
let her go, because
Taylor?
Been
Yes.
very patient.
I feel bad.
I know it's riveting, but
I just wanted to first say congratulations to Lila Bozak on becoming the NH state champion for Poetry Out Loud.
Did she win?
It was neat seeing.
She
her-
won?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't see it. I didn't see the sign.
Yeah, it was so exciting here. I can't imagine the amount of work she put in.
Yeah.
Going up to that competition. That is an amazing accomplishment.
So she gets to go to Washington next. Is it New York then
I'm not
Washington?
sure the whole process, but
David,
But she took the states.
Yes.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I hadn't heard that yet.
So also the high school student council will be holding a school-wide food drive to benefit food pantry and end 68 hours of hunger. All food items will be donated at the end to end 68 hours of hunger, but there will also be an option to donate financially to the Newmarket food pantry. So we're challenging each grade 6 through 12 to donate 68 food items assigned to each grade, which can be found in an announcement just recently sent to all students. And when it becomes time, we will have a box for each grade at their assigned entrance/exit. And we just want to say stay tuned for more details on that in the upcoming announcements. Also, as spring is coming upon us, we want to encourage people to start thinking about running for a position for student council representative or for your class as a class officer for the upcoming school year. More info is to come in the next couple of months, so just keep an eye out. That's all.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you, Taylor.
Susan, now we will have your report, and you can proceed right to the calendar if you'd like to. after you have your
Yes,
report.
yes. So just wanted to mention, since we haven't met, since we got the great news that we would be having a vaccination clinic here on site. I know you all are aware of that. I
Great.
made you aware of that, shared that information with you. But first and foremost, I need to really express my gratitude to Steve Fournier, Kyle True, Rick Molaski, and Mike Hoffman, for their work, on our behalf, in order to get this. They've been real partners here. You know, Steve used his allies and resources to convince them, as did I, you know, to bring this here to Newmarket. But I just want to, you know, publicly thank them for their efforts on our behalf. So the clinic is, the first of the clinics are tomorrow, and the second one will be in April the 9th, so on Friday. It will run exactly the same way that this vaccination clinic will run. So our staff will be vaccinated in the morning, and then Epping will have the afternoon. So I will send a note out to parents after our meeting tonight, you know, to let them know, to the extent that you can avoid the high school area between the hours of, you know, 2 and 6, it would be greatly appreciated. We're having our staff, once they're vaccinated, leave and work remotely, so that, again, we can keep congestion down, we can get the parking lots cleared out to make the event as safe and orderly as possible. So public safety will be out, you know, directing traffic and all of that. Myself and some administrative staff, and Devin Lockley, our new facilities director, will be, you know, on site, you know, all day, working to keep to support the clinic. The vaccine that we will be administering is the Pfizer. So if there's cancellations, you know, we'll need to, you know, backfill those, because the Pfizer, of course, doesn't have a long shelf life once it starts to unthaw. So we're working very closely to get those done. So another shout out to Patty Banfield. We have had to pre-register each employee, double checking, you know, to make sure that they're available in the time slots. She's been working night and day all week to get that queued up and information out. Scheduling the time, individual times for every person. It's been quite the unbelievable project. So we're excited and thrilled, you know, to be able to have this here. It really, I would say, when I announced it last week, when we found out, there was a collective sigh of relief among staff on two fronts. One, that when we were getting it, and two, that they were not going to have to stress out with some kind of a convoluted man for themselves, you know, Hunter Games style registration process that many people we have heard have had to endure. So, you know, for the mental health of our general staff, you know, we're again abundantly grateful for being able to have this here. So lots of work behind the scenes, and of course a long day for many of us tomorrow. I just wanted to give an update, and I'll send a little note out to staff or to families after our meeting tonight to let them know.
I'm going to ask probably a troublemaker question, but so will this, for spring break, teachers can travel if they're fully vaccinated and they don't have to quarantine when they come back? Students might have to, or I know that the governor's changed that.
I think this is one of the things that maybe causes the general public some confusion.
Okay.
Just because not all staff will be vaccinated, right? And there's medical reasons why some people should not, and it's not recommended for them to be vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know at this moment, until I can finish working with Patty this evening, we won't have herd immunity. Yeah. You know, our teachers will have some protection, those that do get the vaccination. There are going to be people that are not going to be vaccinated, and then our student population is not vaccinated, so we're still going to have, let's say, 80% of our student population on campus. We have vaccination that's has 95% efficacy, not 100%, and so the safety protocols will remain. So we will not have to quarantine if a teacher has been vaccinated, fully vaccinated. What that means for us, and this is the great news, is that they won't have to be quarantined if they're asymptomatic and they come in close contact. Anytime somebody becomes symptomatic, the same protocols follow, right? So they're still going to have to quarantine and isolate and all of that. We'll still have to contact trace with students or anybody else that that gets in contact or comes down with COVID, but our staff will be able to not have to quarantine, which should help us to be able to keep our schools open for the rest of the year. I'm not saying, I'm promising it's going to be
Right.
so, but the likelihood that we can will increase dramatically after this. So that's, really the exciting news. So once vaccinated, again, if you're asymptomatic, you do not have to quarantine for travel or close contact. Students, obviously, families, anybody that has not gotten vaccinated would still have to quarantine, and anybody that is symptomatic will also have to quarantine and isolate.
DHHS came out with a recommendation today saying that after domestic travel, it's no business quarantine. Are we still requiring quarantine?
We are. If you remember, Gary, we agreed to follow the highest standard, and it still is known that the incubation period is from 2 to 14 days. It's still on the CDC website, and the determining factor wasn't what that was. It was, what is the incubation period? What's the likelihood that somebody who has contracted it would then transfer that virus to somebody else. So if you go to the CDC website, it still says the incubation period for the virus is 14 days.
But they only recommend quarantining for 10 days and 5 to 7 days if you have a negative test. So why are we still doing
Perhaps
that?
once because we have agreements that we have made and signed with unions and others, that we will follow the highest safety standards. Once everybody has had the opportunity to vaccinate, I think that would be the appropriate time to engage in maybe a dialogue about, what is the highest standard at that point.
I guess, yeah, who is the definitive highest standard that we're using? I thought it was the CDC.
The CDC incubation period is up to 14 days. That's the highest standard. So while the incubation
We have
period.
the recommendation. Aren't we going by their recommendation and not the incubation period?
We're going by the incubation period as the highest standard. Like, when is it the
But
safest?
that's not a standard, that's just,
When is it the safest? What we said is that we would follow science and the highest level of safety standard. That's what we agreed to.
I guess I'd argue that's not a standard, that's scientific fact, but okay.
But that's what we signed,
That's what we
The
agreed
MOAs
to with
for-
all of our staff, is that we would
Yeah.
follow the highest safety standard.
So the, MOA, that's the wording.
Says highest, right?
Okay. And can I just say real quick, I just want to compliment Dr. Gibbons on arranging this, just in case people in the public are watching. In order for a school to be a site for vaccination, they had to have 100 teachers to sign up for it, which made it very difficult for small schools to do it. And for Dr. Gibbons to arrange this is just really amazing. And I can tell you, when I found out I was going to be vaccinated, I was emotional just because every day I walk into that classroom, I am scared. And I think I was told once that we always need to feed the teachers, because if they don't, they'll eat the students. I think this is a really good example of taking care of the teachers first. So thank you.
so just so I understand, we're still gonna require masks.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
All safety protocols remain. You still
And
have to
if someone
social
still has
distance. You
someone
still-
with a vaccination still doesn't feel well, we're still gonna ask them to stay home?
Pardon?
If someone is vaccinated doesn't feel well, we're still gonna ask them to stay home?
Yes. People don't feel well. The big four still remain. Big four still remain. So you wear your mask, you social distance. If you don't feel well, stay home, you wash your hands. I always say those are the big four. There's a lot of protocols, right? We continue to run our ventilation system at the high ASHRAE standards. We still do many, many other things, but yeah, we still will continue to do that. And as I said, I have, suggested that maybe once vaccinations are, fully available, that maybe we can engage in another conversation in the future, and see what might
Yes.
result from that. But, as you said, I always say inspired teachers, inspired students, and frightened teachers and frightened students, don't make for good learning conditions for
And I that err on the side of caution with this because we've been so successful without having in-school transmission that I would be reluctant at this point to even if it were not an MOA situation, I would be concerned about making any adjustments.
And I think the other thing is, you know, I totally understand. We all want to go back to some measure of normalcy, but there's also an awful lot of time and effort that has to go into, and thought that goes into when you make these changes, you know, research, getting a lot of people on board. Our focus right now is, you know, how are we going to address our learning loss issues, right? What kind of programming can we put in place? And you will be getting a pretty full agenda at the beginning of April where we're going to talk about and share with you, you know, where we are with elementary and middle school in terms of student performance, and you know, at least phase 1 of our learning loss recovery plan. And that's really where our energy is.
Yeah.
It's the two things. Opening schools. I mean, I can't tell you, you know, four or five of us every day go down to the junior, senior high school because we still don't have enough staff to keep that open without us going down there. So I know it's not ideal, but we make choices, and our choice is to keep our schools open for our kids. And in order to do that, that means we are all making that our number one priority. And if we all have to go down there and shut the SAU in order to be able to keep our schools open, then that's the level of commitment we have made. When we're not there and doing that, you know, we're trying to focus our intention on future focus, you know. And we've already started the hiring cycle for teachers. You know, we have contract renewals that are coming up. We have a lot of work, and so what we're doing right now is working for us, you know. Re-engineering, you know, will take time and focus away from some of our forward-looking planning. So, you know, I agree with you. If we can make adjustments, you know, let's make them. But on the other hand, what's working well, if we can ride, you know, the efforts that we've put in so far to buy us a little bit of space to be able to focus our time and energy on what's going to matter really in the long run, that is what we're hoping we're going to be able to do. So.
I appreciate it, thank
Yep.
you.
So that's it. The vaccination clinic, a note will go out after this meeting tonight to families. And the other thing, the calendar, I wanted to walk you through it. It's not up for a vote. A lot of time and effort has gone into that. I was going to also share that with families and hold a town hall meeting either next week or the week after. It sounds like we've got, you know, the sporting teams and families going to meet about spring sports, so I might postpone that till the following week, so, you know, we can get as many people as possible together and walk them through. It's different than what you have seen in the past, so I thought, you know, I would take a moment tonight to walk you through and explain the thinking behind it. And so if there's no other questions about the vaccination clinic, I'm happy to move forward to the calendar.
I think we're ready to proceed.
Yeah, I think I would just also like to thank in addition to the SAU and the nurses, the DOE and the state departments that went into helping get the COVID clinic set up, as well as our community partners. Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, so the calendar. We've been actually meeting on the calendar for probably 5 or 6 weeks
Yeah.
now. And it seems like, you know, when you look at it, well, that looks pretty simple. Why does it take so long? But there were a few things that we wanted to explore that are a little bit different, that would be, you know, very beneficial for us if we can put into place. So first I will start with taking advantage of some of the things that have gone well in COVID, or that we've learned in COVID, our COVID experience, that maybe we can bring to bear to benefit us in the future. And so one of those is having occasional independent learning days with student support. So on Fridays, that's what we have in place now. So we started thinking about all of the curricular work and professional development that we need to engage in order to move our school district forward. And we did that in combination of this idea of being able to take advantage of independent learning with kids. Not every week, but a few times during the year, if we could do it. If we can do that, that means that we can take full PD days, full curriculum development and professional development days, and we can get work done, meaningful, targeted work, and we can get some momentum if we can have these days, occur once a month. So that was kind of what we were thinking when we met with teachers. We were talking about our learning loss and how are we going to address some of these challenges that we're faced with. Well, time is always the enemy, right? Time is always the enemy, and so this was the concept. But to introduce this to you publicly, we needed to check with the state to see what their feelings were. And what requirements or hoops we might have to jump through, if any, in order to be able to use this instructional model periodically next year. And so I wrote a letter to the commissioner and Nate Green and received a response from them this week, and they said that we can move forward with this as long as we have we adhere to whatever policies we have on distance learning, which we looked at, and we have the protocols in place, so we're taking attendance and all of the things we do on Fridays now. So that's the really, I think, from an educational standpoint, there's great value to being able to have basically one full day a month is the way the calendar works out to engage in the work we have in front of us. So we tried, then the second part of the kind of the rubric or Rubik's Cube is when do these fall? And what makes sense and what might be easiest for families. And as we were talking it through, we thought, well, if we could couple these days with onto a Friday or a Monday, that families would then, have, the opportunity for a longer weekend. And or if it landed on a Friday, we could have a few homework-free weekends for the secondary students, which is great for their social and emotional well-being. So, so we put a lot of thought into that. We had to make a couple of, changes in the way that we think about how we schedule UAs at the elementary school, and so historically UAs have been scheduled on a Monday through Friday basis, and so we're going to switch that to an A through E schedule. And what that allows you to do is that if a day off falls on a Wednesday, and Wednesday is C day, and you come back on Thursday, then Thursday becomes the C day. So it's not married to a day of the week. In fact, it's your schedule shifts, so the kids then won't be losing instruction in whatever that UA area is. No one particular course or class would be unnecessarily impacted because of the day it falls on. So we've addressed that from a planning standpoint on how we would accomplish that. So a couple of other things. So I'm going to walk through. So in July, we put up so families would know when our extended year program would be running. So you can see those that are highlighted in a red box. It would run from the 6th through the 27th. So that is for our students who would regress over the course of the summer. We're required to provide extended year programming. So they don't experience the same level of learning loss that they otherwise would if they went for a period of time without support. So that will happen for the month of July. I will share more at the beginning of April about what we're going to do for competency recovery at the various levels and course recovery. So stay tuned. How we're the programming we'll have in place for that in an upcoming meeting. In August, we would have 3 orientation days for new teachers. That would be the 23rd, 4th, and 5th. This year, I think we offered 2 days. Next year, we'll offer 3. Our assistant superintendent runs the orientation. It's a really huge part of their induction, and you know, they get to learn. New teachers, you know, get a little primer on classroom management, you know, a little primer on, you know, we'll have a little bit of instructional tips and tricks that we will provide to them. You know, some of the time is spent, you know, getting onto IC and learning about our technology and logging in, and so there's a whole host of different activities that take place on those days to just get them warmed up, make them feel supported and settled in. They get to be in their classroom. We assign them a mentor, you know, all of that. So it's a really nice way to introduce staff to our organization and new teachers to the profession. On the 26th, all teachers would return, and we would have 3 days at the beginning of the year for, again, professional development and to get set up for the school year. All staff would return on the 30th, though we may change that to the 27th, depending on how we are able to schedule different professional development activities for our support staff. So, but for certain, all staff will report by the 31st. And our first day of school for students would be the 31st of August. So what will happen in this, you know, model, if approved, is that we would have a relatively soft start to the school year. So kids would come on the 31st, the 1st and the 2nd. We would get them settled and, you know, into their classrooms and building those relationships and getting some classroom routines done. I'm sure we're going to have some protocols we're still going to have to implement next year. So we'll get folks settled, get them ready. You know, if they have devices, you know, they're up and running. They know how to use, you know, Google Classroom and Zoom and things like that. And then we'll begin in full force and effect after the Labor Day holiday on the 7th. The other thing that we take into consideration, you want to get into a rhythm. You don't want to have a whole bunch of chopped up weeks. You know, it's hard to get into a routine. At the beginning of the year, I always say school opening is a day. It's the month of September, right? School opening is, you know, something that happens in the month of September, where we get kids settled and we get into our routines and rhythms, and, you know, learning happens, athletics starts, you know, there's all kinds of things that are going on in that month. So, so after we open school for the month of September, we'd stay focused on teaching and learning. We would have our first full day off on the 8th. That would be independent learning for families, for kiddos, and with the support of support staff. They're not independent learning with nobody being available. The other thing too is that we worked and partnered with the rec department this year. So when there was independent learning days or 2 weeks, you know, where kids were remote, that there was an option for families, and I'll work with Amy and her staff to replicate that. So if there's parents that, you know, have to work and, you know, they need an option for their kids, you know, I'll work with her so that there is something available for them as there is now. So that would be October, and so it would be a 4-day weekend, you know, for some, you know, kids would, on that would be our first homework-free weekend. So on the 8th, kids would catch up on their homework, make sure things done. They can feel really good about where they're at. We'll have people available to help them if they're stuck, and then they can have a nice 3-day weekend without having to think about projects and homework. So then we'll go into November, and we scheduled the day of the 12th, again, so we could have a full week, the first week of November. November's chopped up anyways, and we didn't want to chop it up more. So the 12th would be a day that's no student, no students are learning on that day. That's just a full-on traditional staff PD, curriculum development day for the junior, senior high school. And that will be when the parent conferences are done, and those will be done remotely because parents seem to enjoy those, more intimate. They don't have to come down to the school. They can schedule a time with their teachers. That worked out really well, so we'll do the same thing this year. We get into December and we'll have another independent learning day for kids and professional development for staff on the 10th. And then on the 23rd, students will not be in on that day, and we'll have another professional curriculum development day on the 23rd for staff. January, again, we've extended Martin Luther King Civil Rights Day by one day. That will be independent learning for kids. Staff will be doing curriculum development and PD on that day. February would be another full day. On the 25th, no students would be learning on that day. That would be a day off for them, but staff would be here doing professional development, curriculum development. And then again on March, on the 28th, that's halfway between the March vacation break and the April vacation break, so that's why we scheduled that at that time. Important to note that the February vacation is really in March this year, so that's a big difference. Our schedule in terms of the breaks align with SST, so that's the same week that they'll be off. And then April will just be the recess week, and May will have one more professional development day, and that is backed up against the Memorial Day holiday weekend. And then the last day of school would be the 16th. That would be, as traditionally is, a half day. That would be the only half day for the year for students. And graduation would be planned for June the 3rd. So, again, I'll take any questions. There's a lot of thought and time that went into this. We've met with both unions. We've talked it through. Folks feel really excited and feel good about it. And certainly happy to answer any questions or any thoughts or ideas or any of that.
At my first glance, looking at the whole moving away from the half day, with the amount of work that we need to get done, it makes sense to have those full days carved out. I think, and I think it could be easier for families too, because it might be harder to find a half day arrangement for someone. But I think from a curriculum development and PD, you can get more bang for the buck for the whole day. So I think that's a good thing.
I've always hated half days. So for me, I love this calendar as far as that goes. And I do like the Learning Fridays.
Can you explain real quick about how February break lands this year and how you worked with the surrounding districts to make sure that our teachers here that have kids there are okay?
Yes. So originally, and this was a little challenging for all of us as superintendents. We kind of work independently to set our calendars, and a couple of school districts had set it for the week of President's Day holiday, and in New Hampshire, New Hampshire's vacation always follows the week after, but because it was so late, a few had originally published their calendar for that week. The state recommended, because they give us an outline that says these are the recommended weeks, and they had the week that we have here, and so Exeter and a few others that had got out in front of this, who had scheduled it in a different week, they held a meeting, and they've changed it so we align, so the SST communities align in terms of how our recess breaks flow. Now, I don't know outside of SST communities, but we do meet as superintendents in the area every couple of weeks, and we do try to engage in conversations when there seems to be a little kerfuffle somewhere along the line to try to align what we can do to the extent that we can. So I know the SST schools are all on this, and I think most New Hampshire schools are now on the recommended state calendar.
And then with the days, that you said that you're gonna coordinate with the Park and Rec, for teacher work days. Do you know, is there any needs-based finance for parents that can't afford that?
I don't know. I'm sure she has that, but I honestly,
Okay.
I could ask her how that whole,
That-
I don't think they've turned anyone away, but
Okay. That's
I'll
Park
ask
and
her
Rec
for
then.
sure.
Okay. And then I'm sorry, can I ask you one more question?
Absolutely.
About the conferences, do you know what percent of parents do the conferences during the day when they're offered? I know it's a random number that you're probably,
I don't know. I think it's a high percentage though,
It
at
is.
least this year. But
Okay.
I will ask.
okay. I just know that's very difficult for us to do it during the day, but we also could be the anomaly. But I also know that deals with, the teachers union, when the conferences are too a little bit, if they're during the day or at night, so I know that
Yeah.
it's not completely up to you.
Yeah, I think that my understanding was that teachers were being pretty flexible on working with families to find a time that worked with them. But
Okay.
I don't know for certain. I've only heard good feedback, but I can check to see, what the percentages are that they're able to connect with.
I'm just thinking about that parent that has to work work during the day, and all these days that they may have to take off on conferences.
Yep, I will check and see if I'm sure must have needs-based. I don't think they turn any kids away, but I'm
Yeah.
saying I don't think they do. I haven't heard anything, nothing's come to me that there's been an issue. So, but I can ask Amy directly, yeah.
Thank you. And they're awesome there, so thank you for our experience.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or questions on the calendar?
It's been approved by both unions.
Yes, we've gone over it, they're very happy, they think it's a great calendar, they know what we have to work, the work we have in front of us, and the stress was, how are we gonna get this stuff done if we,
Yeah, it's really well thought out.
you know,
Wow.
so,
And Susan, I think it's good to have the town hall. I think those have been successful with disseminating information, so I'm sure we'll get that info out to people too.
yes.
Anything else about that?
No. And we'll have another town hall, of course, in April. I've been trying to do at least one a month. And that one will be around summer school programming and options.
Okay.
Okay.
One of the things, so again, I really do try to work closely with, our partners in the town. So one of the things we're looking at is that the rec summer camp program, runs from July, the first week of July through, I think, the 13th of August. And so we're trying to look at, running maybe some boot camps for some competency recovery, where we provide lunches and everything for the kids here, maybe 5-hour day or something like that, on the weeks that the rec department's not offering. So if families don't have an option,
That's great.
and they have to work, that, we're providing,
That'd be really good.
it's kind of a win-win. Not every kid would want to, or
Right.
some families have plans, and that's all well and good, and it's not mandatory, you can't make people come in the summer, but if we can make it fun and learning happens, and it provides parents with, an option when our local summer camps aren't available to them, we're trying to coordinate in that way too. Won't be only, but it, kind of in addition type of a situation, so. More on that, at our next meeting.
Thank you, Susan. We're down to action items now. The first one is, I seek a motion for the approval of the minutes from the March 4th, 2021 public meeting.
A second.
We have a motion from Mr. Swanson, a second from Ms. McKinney. Heather and Andrew, you guys were not present at that meeting, so it'll just be the three of us voting for that. Any amendments to the minutes? Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved unanimously. The next one is the manifest. Gary, could you?
I think we have to actually ask who abstained, I think.
Who abstained?
Well, they haven't.
They wouldn't have voted on it at all.
Yes, I think you'd have to ask for who abstains. I don't know, maybe not.
I don't know, but I will.
You've done it long enough, yeah, so you're probably right.
Yeah.
I make a motion, we approve manifest for March 18, 2021, totaling $627,554.28.
I'll second that.
We have the motion to approve the manifest, same thing, this is the three of us, as you guys were not on board at that time. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
3-0. We approve the sports plan. The next thing, Susan, is the spring coach nomination.
Yes, so Principal Dalton is recommending, 3 coaches that they've gone through the, hiring process for. We were advertising, for these additional coaches to support our spring, sports plan, and I know that they're interviewing and have been doing their reference checking and all of that, so that's still in the process, but these are the 3 before you tonight. So it's varsity baseball, varsity softball, and varsity indoor track.
I approve these coaching nominations as presented in the packet.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. McKinney with a second from Mr. Swanson to approve the coaching nominations. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Coaches are unanimously pleased. And our next meeting is April the 1st, 2021. I seek a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I do have a few items actually I'd like to bring up before that, and I actually have a motion for non-public also. I was wondering if we could maybe find, or one of the board might be able to get some of the options regarding accreditation. So what options the board has regarding accreditation. And the other thing is seems like a significant number of people transferring from the SAU in the 8th grade class this year. I wonder if we could find out historically how many people transfer, whether this is a normal amount or if this is a spike. I'm aware of 7 who have either applied or plan on transferring. So it struck me as a lot of maybe the norm. I don't know.
There used to be 60%.
Yeah. That's a no-
60% of usually between 5th grade and 8th grade, we lose 60% of our kids.
6-0.
Yep. And we've worked really hard to limit that. So 7 really isn't a lot.
Well, it'd be great to see the numbers then. Maybe
Yeah,
it's been an
to see
improvement,
how it's changed, yeah. But it used to be 60.
because I was shocked. And like I say, maybe.
Maybe you could just send me an email, Gary, about what
Sure.
you're looking for specifically, and I can see what I can do. I
Yeah,
do
just
have
the
a full
quantity,
agenda
sure.
at the next meeting that we've been working on for quite some time, so I'm sure that we can get it on an upcoming meeting to answer whatever those questions are, but
Yeah, and just what the accreditation options the board has. I know that's.
I guess, yeah, maybe you could, when you write, or maybe you could call me and explain what you mean by accreditation options. I'm not really clear about what that means, but we can
Sure.
talk
We can
about
do that.
that more, so I can understand what you're asking.
And I'd like to, or I'd make a motion to go into non-public pursuant to RSA 91A3 Roman 2 E, C, and L.
And what are those, Gary, just so we know, the world knows?
I'd have to look at one's discussion regarding advice given by counsel. One is employment, and the other is any matter that may cause a person public discomfort or whatever that. I'd have to look at RSA.
Okay.
Give me the exact term.
Okay. We have a motion to go non-public, we need a second.
I'll second it.
We need to do a roll call vote. Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Durant?
Aye.
I'm aye.
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 We're going into non-public session at 6:56, I think, 46.
46.